Hey, it's TSLA, and this is episode 214 of the Orange Pill Investor. I'm going to end up getting in like 2 or 3 videos today. This one is about what the overall expectations on a option selling strategy should be, and maybe start a little Twitter beef or something. I don't know. Just kidding about that, probably. But I saw this tweet, and it says, if you're following any option sellers who say that you can get 50% plus return every year safely, unfollow them immediately. And this one caught my attention because I'm constantly talking about this. And it seems fairly elementary, but I do agree with him 100% because he added this word safely. But this doesn't have, the reason I agree isn't because of anything that it has to do with option selling in general, because selling options is actually safer than buying and holding. But everything in the stock market isn't safe. So there's nothing safe. So if anybody's telling you to buy stocks and it's safe, then that's not true. If someone is even saying you should buy bonds because those are safe, that's also not true. So nothing is safe. But as far as I can tell, and I've been doing this for 4 years, the only time I got wrecked overall was when I changed my strategy from selling puts and covered calls to poor man's covered calls, which instead of using 100 shares as your collateral, you're using a long call. And long calls can get absolutely destroyed, which is what happened when the Fed rose rates. But unless you're egg heading it too much and putting too much of your eggs in the poor man's covered call basket, as long as I'm just selling puts and calls, I don't see that as being inherently more unsafe than anyone else is just investing in the stock market. And I think it's actually, since you're reducing your cost basis, selling puts and covered calls is actually safer than most of the strategies in the stock market. And let's just take a look and see. So everybody doesn't have to do what I do. So I intentionally trade MicroStrategy because it's a Bitcoin derivative. So, I mean, on one hand, which is kind of a separate issue, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, and MicroStrategy, their strategy is based on Bitcoin maximalism. So I have complete conviction in this particular ticker. But even if I knew nothing about Bitcoin, and I went in here, and this is 4 days, not a full 5 days, but if I want to sell a put here, I got to put up 12 grand, and at the money, I could collect $430, which is between 3 and 4%. Now that's a very aggressive put to sell. But if I only wanted to collect 1%, that would be rather elementary. Like, this would be very easy to get. Now, because of MicroStrategy's volatility, I still cannot call this safe. And nothing I say is financial advice anyway. But there's a 10% discount built in here. If the price crashes 12%, you're still good to go on this trade. The break-even price is 109. You'd be forced to buy these shares at 111, but you're getting paid 132. So the break-even is 109.68. So the price would actually have to fall 10% in order for this to make your overall account value actually drop. And like I said, that's much safer than folks that just buy. If you bought at 111, then your cost basis is 111. But if you sell this 111 put and you get assigned at 111, your cost basis is 109.68. So that's why I say that selling puts and covered calls is actually safer than just buying stocks outright. But what if you don't want to invest in a ticker whose chart looks like this over a year? That's just holy crap, all over the place. Well, you don't have to. And unfortunately, if you go too safe, you can't get the 1%. So if I want to sell at the money puts in Apple, I guess I can get 1% at the money. And then my break even is 214. So you can still get it. It's just not, you're not getting these huge discounts. Same thing for the covered call. In order to get 1% every week, you'd have to go up. Perfect would be in between the 220, 250 and the 225, but there's no 223.75 call. But you could get 1% a week on Apple. You're just only going to get like $3 of callaway value here, which is like 1.5% a week. So it's still doable. It's just not all that advantageous, which is why I don't sell covered calls and puts in Apple. I have, depending on its returns and its implied volatility. I have done it in the past, but even going out to 45 days to expiration, you can get a little bit more callaway value. You can get 1%, but you're not going to be able to collect this every week. You might be able to manage this every 2 to 3 weeks. So yeah, getting 1% a week in Apple would be pretty difficult. Let's just look at some of the mining stocks. Riot. Again, these are going to be very volatile. But selling an at the money put in Riot, you got to put up $650. 1% returns would be $6, 6 cents, 6.5 cents. You can get basically 4 times that. So you can get 4% at the money. That's pretty risky. But even selling technically it's at the money, but there's 47 cents worth of callaway value in here. So that's like 7% callaway value. And you can still get 1.5% every week here. But what if you're not a Bitcoin maximalist? A lot of option sellers I've heard talking about Palantir, and I've used to trade Palantir years ago as well. So putting up $3,400 to get 1% of that, you need to collect 34, and this is 2.5 times 34. Selling a put, selling a covered call, getting 1%, you can go to the 35.5 strike for this week. If I go out to 46 days to expiration, since you have to manage these every 2 to 3 weeks in order to get 1%, you'd have to get 4% up front. 4% of this would be 120 and another 16, so 136. So you could sell the 35 strike, collect 136 every 2 weeks. You'd buy it back for half, pocket the other half. So you'd be collecting like 65, 70 almost every 2 weeks. This is really not hard in my opinion. So I don't want to say that this is just, something edgy for this guy to post or whatever, but getting 1% returns a week, which leads to 52% returns per year, is pretty elementary as far as I'm concerned. But unless you're just not just talking about the premium, like obviously the value of the stock itself can go down. So I had Tesla when it was 400. I rode Tesla all the way down to 100. I got 1% a week up here on 100 shares because I was getting $400 on $40,000 worth of stock. I got 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%. But way down here, 1% of 100 was only $100 a week. And my overall account value, my overall Tesla portfolio had collapsed by 75%. So if he means selling options isn't guaranteed because the underlying stock can also go down, I guess but that doesn't make any sense because that's not a return. The whole point of selling the option is to collect the return. And whether I was selling covered calls on Tesla at 400 and collecting 400, or selling covered calls on Tesla at 100 and collecting 100, I was still collecting 1% a week. My overall portfolio size had collapsed by 75% if I was invested, 100% in Tesla, if that was all I had. Except it would have only collapsed by 75% minus the 1% that I got. So was this November to, this is a whole year. So I'm collecting 1% every week for this whole year. So it's going to be down 75% minus all these percents that I got. So I don't know what that would work out to be, but it's a hell of a lot better than whoever bought it at 400 and didn't sell any covered calls on the way down, and their stocks actually did collapse by 75%. But a covered call seller is going to be stacking cash the whole way and can buy these dips with that money if they want to. And then maybe down here, you've got 125 or 150 shares of Tesla. And then as the price goes back up, then you can sell these shares that you got for 100, you can sell them for 200, whatever. If your shares get called away, or, maybe you have to pay to roll. You got the 50 uncovered shares that went up from 50 to 100, it went up from 100 to 200. You peel off a few of those to roll. And then you buy these dips. And then you peel off some more of these $100 shares to roll at 260, 300. Yeah, I replied to the guy's post, and hopefully he will reply to answer like what he really means by returns. And I'm constantly telling my got wrecked by poor man's covered calls story. So I'm pretty sure I can't be accused of calling any of this shit safe. But it seems like the way that he's saying it is like, 1% returns is somehow like really, just really, really out of reach. But no matter what the price of the stock does, if the price of the stock goes up or down, the ratio of an at the money option or an out of the money option is still just going to be relative to its price. So no matter whether Tesla is 100 or 400, I can still probably get 1%, unless Tesla turns into an Apple, and then I just won't sell it anymore. I won't sell covered calls on Apple. Everybody's favorite lately. Yeah, you can get 2% at the money. You can get 1% selling the $100 strike. So if you think 100, okay, I don't want to buy NVIDIA at 104, but I'd buy it at 100. You can sell the covered call every single week, get 1%, and if it ever drops to 100 or below, now you're the proud owner of 100 shares of NVIDIA at the price you wanted. Does that stop the price from going to 90 and your overall account is down 10%? No. But as long as it takes to get to that point, you're still reducing your cost basis by $100 a week. Same thing for covered calls. If you bought in at 105 and you want to get 1%, you could sell the 109 strikes for next week. So I don't get what the I get the safely part. You know, you're qualifying it with safely, but 1% a week I think is pretty routine and really is pretty conservative. Because even in NVIDIA, which is not volatile enough for me to even bother with, if I wanted to go a little aggressive with it, I could get 2% a week. Like, this is not, it's really not hard to go out there and find premium. Even if you don't want to do these Bitcoin derivatives like I do. To me, it doesn't really take a lot of digging to find something that delivers pretty significant returns. And you could probably even do this like a sniper. Like, I know Coach Mac does this. So if he wanted to get into NVIDIA when it was up here at 134, he wouldn't sell puts here. If I'm, judging his tweets correctly, he'd wait for it to drop maybe to 115, or he might wait for it to drop to 100. He might start selling puts on this dip, and then he'd probably give himself a cushion. Like, he might start selling the 100 puts when it gets here to 120 or 110. And then once the price went back up to here, he'd probably close those for profit. And then he might start selling, or if he has 100 shares, he might start selling covered calls up here at 120 again. But, I think he's doing this for a living, and I still haven't quit my 9 to 5 yet. So I just kind of mechanically sell for the most part. And I don't act like a sniper as much as maybe I should. But if you're doing some of these things that he does, you could probably avoid some of these drawdowns. Instead of selling a put here and then, oh shit, I gotta watch the price go all the way to 110. You're selling the price at 110 and you see it go down to 100. I mean, that's not so bad. All right, that's all for now. Can't wait to see if he replies at all to this. And I really didn't even get into what it looks like if you start reinvesting all of your profits. Because collecting that 1% a week is that's assuming you're just going to withdraw that money and spend it on bubblegum or whatever the hell. But if you're taking that 1% and reinvesting it and getting 1% on 1%, that turns a 52% return into 67% annual returns. So that's it for now. Be good, y'all.